Welcome along to the Whisky Stories podcast with myself, Graham Cogar. We are back in the Athletic Cars, back in Diggers, back in the lovely, big, snug, not sandwiched between the toilets and the bar this evening. And it's going to be a quieter affair because I am flying solo this evening as the host of the Whisky Stories podcast. But I have roped in two very capable and very competent co-hosts. I've got... it's the one and only Fraser Souness. Fraser, how are you?
Very good, Graham. Ecstatic to be back in my old local.
It's great. It's great to have you here, sitting beside me. Normally I'd be staring at Ross right
It's
now.
nice and cosy. It must be better for you.
It's going to be nice. We're all going to get a lot more to say tonight. It's a shame for the wee guy. He's on his deathbed.
Hi, R.I.P. Ross.
RRP or RIP? Recommended retail price of what? But he's not here because he's unwell. So Ross, if you're listening to this, get well soon, but not too soon because we're quite enjoying not having you on the podcast this evening. And of course, for people who are watching this video, Angus has not lost a lot of weight. It's actually Angus is still over in Japan, stuffing his face with raw fish and rice and washing it down with a bottle of Haddington House. And to take his place, who is then about to substitute himself into Japan tomorrow, we've got Charles Chuck Kerr. How are you, Charles?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
That's great to have you here. Great to see you. I mean, honestly, I still just look at you sometimes and laugh at some of the stories.
I get that a lot, yeah.
From your debut episode when the story of just the farm and everything that went with it, the olive oil salesman spiel, the rocks, farming. What was it? Delivering a calf.
Oh God, yeah. I didn't even remember. I must have had a couple of drums before I told that story.
You did. You were in on another. You've been on a couple of episodes, a few episodes now.
Yeah, I think
and New Year's as well. New Year's
I
episodes,
was, which again, I had quite a few drums.
We all did.
Yeah.
We all did. Shout out to Ali Baxter.
Oh yeah.
Great to see us. How are we getting on? You alright?
I am alright. You alright?
I'm really excited for this. It is nice to be back in Diggers, and yes, it's been great. We've got drams in front of us. What have you got, Fraser?
Hold on. Mobile device will be needed for this because I don't want to mess it up. The first one is a 34-year-old Girvan from Whisky Cellar.
Well done.
Oh, I had that in last week. That is.
I listened. You had it, and Ross also said it was quite tasty. Always good to start with a grain. Always a good way to get the palate going. In the middle, I'm warming up because I'm going to Holyrood in 2 days' time. I've not tried their recent release. It's the whatever they've called it, the Holyrood something.
Yeah, good.
The Re-Rack Experimental Edition.
Fantastic.
And then the last one is a Tree Cara.
Tree Cara, yeah.
Tree Cara. 16-year-old Altmore.
Fantastic, brilliant. What about yourself, Chuck? What are you dramming?
I've also got a grain. I got slightly younger. I got a 14-year-old North British from Signatory. Bottled at 46%. And then I got a 14-year-old Longrow Longmorn from Woody's bottling from that. So first for bourbon. I did have it. I popped in here on Sunday just for a half and a half. I'd bumped into Ross and his father, who had.
Oh, that's Whiskey Dad. That was Saturday. That was
Saturday, and they had been on it. I would say. So what became like about 4 drams quite quickly. I got that for Ross's dad, and then was incredibly upset that I didn't have it myself. So
brilliant.
I rectified that now. I'm very pumped for it.
I did see on the Whisky Stories Facebook group, Ross did put up like his own thread about all the drams that him and his dad were having on this Saturday.
Okay.
So I was aware of that, and I'm also aware that based on him and his dad sitting in Diggers drinking drams all day, I think Kev's managed to buy himself a new car on the back of what they'd spent. But yeah, it was great. I have decided to go with, now on my left we're going to talk, in fact I'll start on my right. We've got I went for the Inchgower 14 fragrant drops, which was tried on our most recent Indie Bottler Spotlight, which was given, and Charles, one of the reasons I took this is because you have been outdone on this episode for a wanky tasting note.
I did see the Instagram.
Yeah, like standing on Banff Harbour with a cripple foil thing of sticky toffee pudding as the sea air hits you in the face.
I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Do that all the time, eh?
Yeah,
I'm always in bonk.
Someone's done that. I mean, but what I'll also mention is if nobody has watched the Indie Bottler Spotlight episode on our YouTube channel, please do. And a big shout out to the guy who fell asleep half an hour to the end of our whiskey tasting. He was in shot for the full recording, and roughly about 30 minutes before the end you start to see his head just slightly going, and then he just falls asleep. If you're listening to the episode, you have listened to the episode, and I think right towards the end I said some of us literally need to get to our beds. That is because at that point he was snoring. So during a rowdy Friday night in the Athletic Arms, he was.
I think you can tell which guy it was, because in the middle of the podcast he's the one that goes mental about Edinburgh.
Yes.
Because Edinburgh is the best city on earth.
Fair play him for coming along. He came in, he'd been at the bar, I don't know how long he'd been at the bar, but just decided, oh, you doing a tasting, can I join in? I said, absolutely fine. Sat down. His tasting note for Glen Grant 21 was powerful. Good and powerful. Fair play, well done for coming along, and I hope you got a good night's sleep. But we are joined by a guest, and it's a Scotch Balmoral heavy crowd we've got in the night, because we've actually got the replacement of Ross Barr who took his job.
Taller, handsomer.
That's it. Well, welcome along, Curtis Moran. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Finally.
Great to have you here, and you complete the set now.
That's it. You've completed Scotch.
We've completed Scotch. After we've recorded this episode, I've been told that because we have covered Scotch so much that I am entitled to one free Macallan 40. I've had that on good authority.
He can do that one.
Sign off. And what I will say about Curtis is you are one of my favourite bartenders at Scotch, because unlike the guy to my left here, you don't scowl and roll your eyes when I walk in. Always greeted with a great smile.
Yeah, you're a good guy. He just doesn't like when somebody questions him. So
yeah, well, it's great to have you here. What have you got in front of you?
I've went for probably could be either a really good decision or terrible. 3 cash strength whiskies.
Wow. Are you going to try and emulate Fraser's first episode?
We're going to try and one up here, you know.
That was alright. The issue was the morning after I couldn't mind what I said.
No,
I had the fear. I
recorded it.
I remember the shift. I hope I'm alright. Might get fired. So went with, to start off, Bunnahabhain Fazio 2024, done in a ruby port cask. If I'm right in remembering, it's 60.4%.
Wow, there you go.
Then I've went with your own wonderful Lindors. Finally get to try it,
there you go.
Which I'm excited for. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't tasted it yet, so if you hear me thrown up in the corner, we know why.
What's it? Woody said if it's not good, we'll just call it art.
Somebody out there appreciates it, and that's all that matters.
Also, having a close friend and also co-host of the podcast who works for an app where you can rate whiskies that go on it. I think you'll find that on the Bevy app, that Lindors Abbey is the highest rated Lindors Abbey bottling. There you go.
There's no bias at all in any of Bevy's work.
I mean, he didn't fix anything, but he just told me send it to as many people as you can and get them to give it 10 stars. Well, I like about Benny, and this will be one of the last times you mention them until they give us some money. But basically, instead of 5 stars, they have 10 stars, which is quite interesting when you're trying to go along the scale. But anyway, sorry, carry on your third track.
No. And then finally, I went with. I'm going to go with Tree Cara, is that what you said? Tree Cara, 27-year-old Bowmore.
Lovely.
Which is in refill sherry. So, hopefully.
That's the Balmoral money coming in.
Refill sherry that we went for,
it looks like a different one. I think.
No, it's bourbon.
It's bourbon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bowmore and bourbon.
There we go, even better.
Lovely.
How Bowmore.
We got to Ola Lopatowski from Tree Cara. It was a brilliant, actually, interlude to the day, because it was when we were at Edinburgh Whisky Festival. She came over and said, look, I've got this little sample I want you to try, and we tried it whilst we were recording. And as a dram, when you're halfway through a whisky festival, it was just absolutely fantastic. It's lovely.
Bowmore bourbon is peak.
And I don't know what's the ABV in that one.
I do have a photo, so
I think it's 52%.
I like it compared to your, because
compared to 60.
The Lindors Abbey is 60.6% as well.
I'm looking forward to trying that Bowmore. I've not tried it yet.
Is your Lindors, is that available at the bar?
Yes.
All right, okay.
53.1%. And then got it wrong. Bunnahabhain is only 58.7.
Oh, there you go.
You know, we're fine.
Well, we've both gone for the Bunnahabhain.
We have.
Now, that was my second dram here. Now, the reason I've gone for Bunnahabhain is, recently actually, and I'm wanting enlightened, I've stayed clear of Bunnahabhain. And as many of you will know, it sounds counterintuitive, because am I right in saying Bunnahabhain's one of the only non-peated whiskies on Islay?
And it's like
mainly non-peated,
yeah. As well. That's like
I don't know what it is, and I think I've had a couple of Bunnahabhains. What is the most standard release that you'll get in the supermarket?
12.
Yeah, Bunnahabhain 12. And was it once non-age statement?
Strunrada?
Strudar and the toy checker as well, which is
no, but there was once I was at a Jolly Toper wine tasting, and he put two side by side, and it was both Bunnahabhains. It turned out Bunnahabhain 12, but it was Bunnahabhain the previous.
Oh, the now and then. Was
Yeah,
it?
so cool.
Okay.
So it was a side by side. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, at the time, and I'm sorry to anyone who's listened from Bunnahabhain, I just didn't get it. At all.
Cam's crying.
I know, but what I'm desperately, and this is what's great, is like when you've got a bar like the Athletic Arms with one of the biggest collections of open bottles of whiskey in Edinburgh, 800 and odd bottles open. I saw it behind the bar. Someone had obviously, I think it was a Bunnahabhain 14 that they'd ordered, and I just saw the bottle there. I thought perfect opportunity, because it just seems that for very recently, and in a lot of episodes, people have talked a lot about Bunnahabhain. So I just thought I'm going to give this another go. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think
it's a brilliant distillery. It's my favourite.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's a good job Ross Barr's not here to deny you that. Cameron famously was told what his favourite whisky isn't and what his favourite whisky should be by Ross. It's great, but no, it's fantastic. But Curtis, we have mentioned you work at Scotch.
Yes.
You basically, what happened was when Ross left, he took his step ladder with him.
Yeah.
So they had to get somebody who was a little bit taller.
I don't need it. No, Ross left, and I actually got sent a message off Ross saying, there's going to be a positioning opening up.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was more of a threat, to be honest, because I remember it said, if your application better be in, or if it's not in, you're in trouble.
Oh, really?
So I was like, great, yeah. I'd said the last time a position went up was when Fraser went in.
Yeah.
I remember saying, if something comes up, happy to join.
Brilliant.
Love to come in. Be my dream job for a long time.
Great.
So this was it. Curtis was meant to apply when I got the job,
and I didn't.
But he didn't. And then Ross and Cam just went, Fraz, you can have it.
There you go.
So I was sorted. So this time Ross was like, Curtis, I'm leaving. Get your application in. We knew Curtis because he would come in the bar and.
Was funnily like.
Wait a minute. So hang on a second.
Mini Ross.
Did Ross take your position, Chuck?
No.
I should have just said Jeff for the sake of it. Not Scott. He took.
Ross took my brother's.
Yeah.
Right. But who took yours?
I don't know.
Tam?
Tam was there before I got there.
How many people have we had on this podcast?
Oh, it would have been Dario. Dario took mine.
Dario, there you go.
Okay.
The
little bear.
Two very different personalities.
There you go.
I think they were trying to correct the boat.
Yeah.
They're like, it's pretty moody in here. We should probably get someone nice and foreign.
The Italian stallion.
Yeah. Great. But fantastic. And now, the thing is, you're not the first actor that we've had on the Whisky Stories podcast. Danny Dyer was an actor.
Danny Dyer was one of the few that after I got my first and only acting gig, I spent a bit of time chatting with him. He gave me some pointers, some advice. Fantastic actor, actually.
Yeah.
I'll give him some real props on that.
So,
really, really good actor.
So you were an actor. What you said, your first and only acting job?
Yes, I didn't go off and study acting, but it was always what I thought I wanted to do. And there was an open casting call for the second season of a BBC TV show, Clique. And I'm not surprised nobody's heard of it.
The entire room just looks at each other.
Are you on IMDb?
I will say that was one of my goals, was I wanted to be on IMDb. I do have a
really?
unphotographed thing on IMDb for it.
We could probably get you a credit for the Whisky Stories podcast.
That gives me 2 credits. I've doubled what I wanted in my lifetime.
Go ahead.
But
Making dreams come true.
Quite funny. Went off and auditioned for that. Got offered a basically bona fide extra job on it.
Cool.
playing one of the bartenders in the opening episode.
Real stretch from your...
difficult.
What was funny about this was before I'd taken the gig, I'd never worked behind the bar. So first time ever behind a bar, I'm pretending to be a bartender in Devil's Advocate.
Really?
So we'd done the filming there, it was great, done an overnight shoot, had a great experience with it, got my professional credit, and then open auditions became quite quiet on the run up to COVID. COVID kicked in, and I never went back.
There you go. Well, like that. I mean, what's it? Glenn Morngie had what's his name? Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And we've had Curtis Moran on the Whisky Stories podcast. And
there you go.
So there you go. It's that's fantastic. So basically, what you're saying is working behind the bar is effectively acting.
Yeah, to be fair, 100%, that's what it is.
Well
you've been in Scotch, you've seen that we act like we all like each other.
What a double act that you are. To be perfectly honest, when you're in there, it's great.
It can be.
Yeah.
He's quite positive. I just get the job done.
Yeah, just get in there, get the job done.
Keep the balance.
Angus is really worried that you're going to stay. So how do you make the step then from acting into whiskey?
I was on a night out when I was 20, maybe 21, and went around a bunch of bars and happened upon Uskeby.
Right.
So bar that used to be underneath what is now the West End Brasserie. That used to be
Ryan's
Bar, big, great rugby pub, to be honest, actually, when it existed. I went in there for a couple of drams, and I was fairly naive in whiskey at that point. Didn't know much, too much. I'd fallen in love with it thanks to, at the time, my girlfriend's older brother. So went down there basically to have a couple of drams and learn a little bit.
Cool.
Guy behind the bar, Daniel, we spent the night chatting away, got on really, really well, and we ended up going out for drinks once the bar shut. Got home the next day, got a message off him being like, great to meet you, blah, blah, blah. You should come back in. Went back in for another one, and he just said, what are you doing on Monday? And I was like, I'm free, why? I went, good, show up here, wear a shirt, you've got a job interview.
Wow.
I was working at the time as a window cleaner, so I was doing mornings.
Cleaning windows?
Yeah, cleaning windows at the time. If you start if you start singing the song, I swear I've heard it.
Cleaning windows. Superb.
So went in for the interview and basically sat down with Michael, who at the time was the bar manager, and he basically just went, I just want to make sure you're not a complete weirdo. Yeah. You can string a sentence together, which I struggled with. And
so then peeping in the window.
We either need rid of you, or you're going to work here.
You'd have walked in there, it was a basement bar, and be like, oh, thank God.
I know you're very good at cleaning glass.
That's probably why they hired me, to be fair. That was how I started out. So started working there as part-time. So we're still working 5-6 days a week as a window cleaner in the mornings. Would kind of finish my shift, sleep for 2 hours, and then go in and do 8 hours in the bar.
Now, were you a proper window cleaner up ladders, or were you one of the guys at the bottom with a telescopic pole?
We're not going to go into reach and wash because I've got really, really angry views on that. No, I went up the ladder and I ended up with a fractured rib to prove it. Yeah. So
I mean, the Windy Stories podcast, because this is fascinating. Because window cleaner gets did you have a wee bike with a bucket on the handles and a ladder at the side?
No, thankfully I worked with guys with a car. If I was ever out working on my own, a lot of the time that I was out, we would cover my local area. Okay. So, you just walk a bit with a ladder over your shoulder, carrying a bucket of pail.
Whistling away.
Aye, basically.
That's the windy cleaner here. Fantastic. Actually, I've just remembered Ross Barr was an actor once. Really? He played extras on Taggart. He played the dead bodies. but they had to pay him off because they kept running out of chalk. Oh, God. Get well soon, Ross.
Ross, even if you're not here, you get absolutely slagged to bits.
Right, so now wait a minute. Now, did Uskeby not play a bit of a role for you, Chuck, as well?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. So I knew, when I first got in, it was Chris and Michael.
Were
number one and number two.
So I never worked with Chris, worked with Michael. I actually give him big props. I owe a lot to Michael. He done a lot with giving me kind of education in terms of whiskey and things like that. Great guy. So, you know, cheers, Michael, if you listen.
Oh, because you were working. Where was it? You were working.
I was working at Cali.
Cali, that's right.
Yeah, across the street, and then I was like, "This is shit." Beautiful hotel.
Still looking for the sponsorship here.
No, you're not gonna get it from them. So it was me and like two of the guys that worked there. We would, after we were done with our shifts, we go across the street and like drink drams together, and just hound Michael and Chris and be like, "What is it? What is this stuff? Why does it look that way? Why does it smell that way? Stop telling me everything I say sounds really wanky." So they were really, really good. And Daniel was great as well.
Daniel was great laugh.
I wonder who it was, because Uskabe's also Hector McLean told a story about his cousin Charles McLean, the Charles McLean.
So not his uncle.
Well, no, I think they're cousins technically, because we did question this.
Right, he's aged a lot better than Charlie.
Well, I think because the Bruce McLean clan is like massive, but I think they're sort of all
going into history here.
Yeah, but anyway.
Where's Angus?
Angus really should be. Exactly. Have you not done your research on the Bruce McLean clan?
This is the first I've heard of any of this.
But basically his story was Charles McLean, they're in Uskebe.
Oh, this is Johnny Walker's story.
Yeah, so he walks in and says, "Oh, Johnny Walker Red, please." The boy, obviously behind the bar, knows exactly who he is. "Oh my God, it's Charles McLean." "Oh my God, nice to meet you." And he says, "Can I get some Johnny Walker Red label?" And that's what's fantastic about someone like Charles McLean, is he'll still to this day talk about the importance of blended whiskey and things like that. And you can imagine
he prefers blends,
but I mean, imagine how many people we've come across people. I was one of them at one point where you'd say blends naked. But yeah, you've got a guy who's probably tried some of the most incredible whiskey. He's on IMDb as well. He's played himself in the movie. But
Angel Share. Great film.
But so he said, "Johnny Walker Red, please." And they came back and said, "I'm really sorry, Mr. McLean, we don't actually have enough." And he was like, "Don't worry, just put a bit of black bottle in it." You know, I mean, from Uskabe's no longer there, but how many bottles of whiskey would they have behind the bar?
I think maybe 200-300.
Yeah, thereabouts.
At most.
And what would you be looking at a range from Johnny Walker Red Black Bottle all the way up to what?
There's always cool stuff.
To the Glendronach 33. Wow. Cam's got a quite funny story about that one. Next time he's on, he can get him to tell that.
They don't also
I have to get him on to apologise for you two.
The Macallan.
That 12-year-old canned heads Glenfiddich Dumpy.
Yeah. And
like some really cool, like really old school bottlings of Highland Park, and I think like I forget the name of the range from Diageo, but it was like a Brora.
They had some of the cool
private collection or something like that.
They had really old Mortlach. When I worked there, that was the one that I was always really interested in. It was like Mortlach from like 1936. Pre-World War G&M bottling. It was £200 a nip. Which now that I think about that, absolute bargain.
I mean, it's funny that it's like we look at it and you talk about whiskey pricing and stuff, and like you know the price that you've got that Balmoral 27, £25 for 35 mils. Now,
fantastic.
There'll be so many people who listen to this and be like, "I can't believe someone would spend over 20 quid on one whiskey." And as I've carried on through what I've been doing, is I've sort of moved on from being like £7 or £8 for a whiskey. Now, of course, it's all about value, what you're getting, you know, and this is where Diggers is so good in the sense that you're getting 35 mils at a very reasonable price.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, if you were to try to buy that in town or in other places, you'd be probably paying quite a lot more for that.
Definitely.
So
that particular mort, like just about, it was distilled in 1936. I think it was bottled in the 70s or the 80s. It was
something like that.
A screw top as well. So that was like a very specific period of time.
Yeah.
It was. We had it in Scotch briefly when I first started, so I was fortunate enough to taste it. And it was.
It's one of the those unicorn drams for me that I've never got to try. And I remember asking after
unicorn drams. You never will.
Because obviously they had all the bottles in Uskebe shut.
Where did they go?
That's what I asked. I was like,
where did those bottles?
Where have all these bottles? Sold a lot of them to Chookters, John down in Chookters Landing. Bought all of them. They've got the Hoop game. And then Uskebe closed, they sold a lot of their stock, but obviously a lot of it was opened.
So a hoop game being, so basically, I've seen it on the board, What do you pay, a £5 or something?
It's a £5 for 3 hoops.
And you get 3 hoops and you can chuck them over.
And whatever one it lands
Whatever bottle you got your hoop round.
But if you
got a
miss,
dram
you
off.
get given, what's it, whistle pig?
Sheep
No,
dip
sheep
or
dip,
something,
that's
yeah.
the sheep.
What a great idea. Like, that's...
To be fair,
good fun.
It was how I discovered that sheep dip is actually not bad.
That's and you've got a terrible aim.
Really bad aim.
Yeah, there you go. Now, Chuck, you have also... You know, you've given up the farming game, you've given up the olive oil game, and you're in employment.
I am, yeah, I'm gainfully employed.
Well done.
Thanks, man. I needed it.
You started asking for a fee when you were coming on the Whiskey Experience
I just thought you could buy me a pint.
So you're now working as well. What are you doing?
So I started in December. I started working for Edinburgh Whisky Co, which is the sister company of the Rare Fine guys.
Yeah.
So they have a warehouse just outside Glenrothes. So I'm now working in the warehouse up with them, rolling casks,
super,
making cash.
That's the important part.
Rolling casks and making cash. That's going to be the headline of this podcast.
Should be making cash and rolling casks. So I'm doing some cask maintenance stuff with them. I'll be doing some labelling, and then I'm getting to do some sensory stuff as well. Which,
cool.
If anyone has heard me talk on this podcast before, is the absolute fucking dream.
Because were you at the time, were you slightly involved in the tasting of the Whiskey Stories podcast, 25-year-old blend?
No, I wasn't involved in that. I was involved in the Wraith Rovers.
Oh yeah, the other bottle. Yeah. Because I mean, like that's the thing now. So, like speaking to Greg, friend of the podcast, Greg Urquhart, who's been on, and you know, he talked about how at the time, you know, he's been part of Glenmore Spirits for
employee number 1.
A long time, and he's seen that business grow and grow and grow, and you know, the Lowland Bond is a massive bonded warehouse. And the amount of casks that are being stored in there is incredible. The releases that they're putting out, the whiskey brands that they also have as well, and other whiskey brands that they work with, it's huge. So Greg's job, in fact, in the sense of like he often talks about now, like his role has gone from selecting casks, opening them, and sampling them, to basically working in front of spreadsheets. But I suppose you're his nose now. Part of his nose. I
think that would be the hope. I mean, Greg is so like humble when it comes to all that kind of stuff. And like having a conversation with him, he's just like, it's just kind of snowballed for him. And having conversations with him, you hear about stuff when it comes to bottling whiskey and maturing whiskey and really planning for these things that I would never have thought to ask the questions that I'm getting to hear about. And even when he's talking about kind of trying to plan future releases, he's talking about maturations and then kind of starting to understand potentially where things would go from past releases, and then maybe closing in on that scope of time frame of maybe how long something would work, and maybe it'd be cool to see how something could go down the line. And I think they're starting to get a little bit more comfortable with that, with the size of the business that it's growing.
That's fascinating, because I mean, I was hosting a tasting at the Glass House last week as we're recording this, and it was it wasn't a versus. It wasn't a versus. It was kind of like a versus, but we didn't do a scoring or anything like that. It was Finn Thompson from Finn Thompson Whisky, and we know what we're getting with his whisky because some of them are absolutely
fantastic,
absolutely great. 3 drams he had on the lineup, and then it was Antonia Bruce from Adelphi. Probably, if Angus was here, we'd be able to tell us a distant relative of the Bruce McQueen. But she was Adelphi, and of course Adelphi have Ardnamurchan as well. But it was interesting. She was talking about the sort of process of Adelphi and how it started, and it goes all the way back to the history, but also I think it's her brother who's the operator, managing director of Adelphi now. And they were talking about how it was very interesting hearing her, and I asked her a little bit about it during the tasting, and she was explaining how their model is not putting casks away and laying casks down. I think they might do that, but they said their space is very limited and very small.
Right.
So basically they're kind of saying, like, you know, we buy casks to bottle. And I think through the sourcing of casks, we speak to a lot of independent bottlers, and one of the things that we've all heard about is the challenges that they have when sourcing casks, and Greg's been open enough and talked about that as well, and there's been plenty of others. Woody and Megan has said the same, and it's like quite often you don't know what you're getting. You get given a parcel, but that if you've got the luxury of being able to lay casks down, then when casks come in and you don't think they're ready yet, or you could re-rack them, etc., etc., etc. Whereas Antonia basically said, like, whatever we don't use, we'll try and just sell on and get right. And I think that's why I think they always wanted to, because the Adelphi distillery was where Adelphi came from. And basically, I think they always wanted to get a distillery, which is what Ardnamurchan is now functioning, and absolutely cracking drams from there. But it was very interesting to hear her side of it, say we just take the casks and we bottle them as is. Whereas if you look at what Glenmore Spirits are doing with Rare Finds and all the different and Whiskey Row and all these kind of things, the inventory that they have, and then it's about. Greg talked about scoring systems that he has, and then says, like, if it's a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 or whatever, it's maybe ready to go, or we know we're going to put in that. So you're future proofing and future planning now as well.
Yeah, well, Greg would be the first one to say I think it's a very new part of the business for them. I mean, like the last couple of weeks, I think they've been able to get access to some new make spirit and stuff like that. So we've been filling casks, and I guess the hope would be to see how that would be in 10, 12, hopefully 20, 30 years' time. But the warehouse doesn't stock just fully for rare find releases. There's a bunch of other stuff, and if it turns away that you can't return that, or you can't put it into a cask that would rectify the flavour profile, then you've got to figure out what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's really cool to be part of something that's I just need to clear my throat. I'm not getting that emotional.
It's really good to be in a job. I'm just so glad I don't have to go back and throwing rocks at a field.
I just keep on looking fields at rocks and crying. It's really cool to be part of something that's kind of that's hoping to do something like that large, and to be kind of. I mean, I'm not employee number one, but I'm not like employee 500 either.
It's really exciting for a company that is growing quickly. But even they've still got that feel of getting everyone involved. Like when you joined, you were a cask pusher.
I am.
You were, But now even Greg, when he's doing his sensory evaluation, he's like, "Jack, what are you doing tonight?" And you'll nothing. And you'll great.
I had my first sensory session with him like last week. So
a sensory session then.
Yeah.
Talk us through. Like you're saying sensory session. For me, I'm just picturing you sniffing a lot of whiskey.
That's pretty much exactly what it was.
Right, Let's call it.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Had an evening of smelling whiskey. That
I've heard, right?
Was at the clock for.
I've heard a little rumour, right, that Greg's actually changed his whiskey sensory sessions to sniff it, sip it, score it, 60 seconds.
We'd be there all day if we did 60 seconds per.
So what's a sensory session look like?
I mean, I've not done a lot of them, but effectively you've got a bunch of cask samples. Generally, we'll pull small, like 30ml pours from casks, and then line them up in glasses, and then we'll smell them. You might have multitude of different sister casks, so same distillate, filled same day, and in effectively the same oak.
Right.
And then you're smelling each one of them, and maybe have a small taste, and generally spittoon, because got to drive home.
Yes, of course. We're going to sensory responsibly.
Sensory responsibly. But so you're then deciding, like, as Greg said before, 1 through 10, is this something we could potentially bottle? Is this something that, if we give more time, could go into something really, really cool? Has this got a fault? Do we need to move this into a new vessel and see if we can correct that? Or is this perfect in every shape and form?
Wow.
That kind of thing.
And do you do that like blind in terms of you don't know what you're tasting, you just know it's sample number 1? Or do you know, right, we've got a 25-year-old Bal Blair here?
I think some of the stuff I didn't know anything about. He just wanted my honest opinion on stuff. And hopefully that continues. Hopefully I'm not shot myself in the foot by talking about this on a podcast. But
I've got to edit this and put it out tomorrow, so please don't phone me and say go and cut that out. But no, I mean it's a fact that, like, I think it's a part of whiskey that we all talk about and hear about, and we've been very heavy on the production side this year. We started, we've Stephen Stephen Woodcock, and then having and going to Portleith Distillery. So I'm actually sporting the Portleith Distillery T-shirt I got on from our tour there.
Looks good on you.
Thank you very much. But Ian,
all the barley comes from Hannington, by the way.
Yes, we know that. Exactly. And it's the shortest mileage. They reckon one of the shortest, if not the shortest, for a distillery, because it goes
just great barley, man.
Yeah,
it's not a rock to be found in those fields.
If you're wondering what this reference to rocks, please stop what you're listening to right now. Go back and listen to the Chuck Kerr episode that he came on and had us in hysterics. It was brilliant, and he talks about that COVID summer in Addington. And
summer, it was 2 years, man.
2 years of farming.
Still paying for the therapy class.
but the production side of it, and it has opened my eyes. We've talked a lot about distillery character, we've talked about the process of making whiskey, but I've always been and my mind has been a little bit changed over the last few months actually, about that, casks is where the flavour comes from. Casks is what makes it flavour. But I think, as Stephen rightly said in his episode, was if it was only the casks, then why not just have one massive distillery in the centre of Scotland that just churns out, pumps out spirit, and it's just about the casks? How can you have, and it's all about distillery character, but at the same time you're at the other end of that now, because you're at the point where the distillery character has already been decided. It's already been decided what vessel it's going to be going in, what wood it's going to be used for, and then it's up to you, and you're getting it secondary. And that's one of the things I've always wondered, and we talked a lot about it with George and Rachel on the Fragrant Drops Independent Bottle Spotlight, was it might now start to swing in the bottler's favour with the way that the industry is, where it's maybe becoming a bit more of a buyer's market.
Massively.
And it's just becoming an area where the bottlers can have a little bit more power to say, because right now, the way we talk about it, we're hearing so many different things. Curtis, it's maybe a bit of a tricky time in the industry.
Yeah. You can see that. I think one of the big examples of how it is, maybe on a much smaller scale, look at whiskey auctions.
Yeah.
Right now, you can buy bottles of whiskey that would normally cost, $1,000, couple of thousand, getting them way cheaper.
Yeah. And Fraser, is that the sign of we're trying to actually get an auctioneer company there? They've agreed we're going to maybe do a.
You want to start a whiskey stories auction?
No, we're going. No.
Expanding quickly.
No, we're actually. I'm trying to arrange it so that, because I actually got to walk through their warehouse with all the bottles that they have. Fascinating, and it's a part of it's the one part of the industry that we've talked about. We've really had no representation on the podcast for. So they're dead keen. We're going to maybe record an episode in the warehouse. Cool. Maybe get Angus and Ross to do a supermarket sweep where they're running.
Just go through whatever you can.
But it's fascinating. But one of the things that they were saying is they've been in the game for maybe 10-15 years in whiskey auctioning. And what they were saying is that the big brands have really killed the auction, because what they've done is they've made it difficult for what you would call the flipper, right? Because they've made you can't now say, I'm going to buy 10 bottles of that stuff because it's so reasonable now, knowing fine well that in 5 or even in a year's time it's going to be available.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing it. I think bigger brands, bigger companies, and you speak to a lot of their brand management team. Sorry, I'm not crying either. When it comes to their core products, often it's quite easy, and in the younger ages and more consistent releases, they're limited older stock, 30, 40, 50 years plus. People aren't buying that as much.
Yeah.
People that were buying that were often buying that to collect, hold on to, and resell.
Yeah.
That's not so much there anymore. No. So the people that are buying it to consume is much less. So,
but I mean, is that? I mean, it's a funny one, right? First question to all of you: has anybody bought a bottle of whiskey with the sole intention of not drinking it, but one day putting it up for sale because it might be more expensive?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Good. Thanks.
Not to put up for sale, but there is a bottle that's in my collection that when I purchased it, it was under the guise of I knew I wasn't going to open it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also the same.
Right. Yeah. So you're not categorically not going to open it, or are you going to wait till the right time to open it?
No, I think I bought the bottle because I thought I liked the idea of God, I love it. I'm old.
Yeah.
Never know how much whiskey you drink and could KO at 40, especially when you go out drinking with Fraser.
Well, please go out with Fraser responsibly.
that that should be the tagline in whiskey. It's not drink responsibly, it's go out with Fraser responsibly. But no, I was very, very fortunate to be able to get hands on a bottle of the Springbank 10-year-old Ukraine bottling.
Wow, yeah, okay.
And I remember when I got it, the story of me getting it is mental.
Right.
I was quite friendly with some of the guys at Cadenheads. I was told that the bottle would be released and that you had to be there at 10 o'clock in the morning and queue for it. However, I had a doctor's appointment at 10:30.
Right.
So I was like, it's never going to work. But I got my flatmate at the time drove me past the shop.
Okay.
And there was a massive queue.
Really?
All the way up.
So this is... Talk me through this Springbank 10 Ukraine bottling then. Is this...
This was during COVID, I think, near the end of COVID.
Basically, I can't remember how long it was, maybe like a couple of months after the Russian invasion of Ukraine had kicked off.
So it wasn't during COVID at all, that was after COVID.
That's 2020 slap bang in. I was working in HMRC at the time, so...
You were working at HMRC?
Yep, I worked for the government during COVID. I was going to say, if we fully dive into my job history here...
Was this before or after you clean your windows?
This was after my career in Windows.
You were cleaning windows at the HMRC and they just offered you a job?
I worked in national insurance for HMRC and then I moved on to...
Get them in.
and then moved on to the tax side.
Cleaning windows with one hand, CV and the other.
He's got a laminate, so it doesn't get wet.
Yeah, you're just there like tapping on the window. You guys hiring, by the way. Thank you. I was there working with them, so I've spent a year working in national insurance, spent a year and a bit working in tax. Best advice: don't ever do it.
Right. Working whiskey.
Working whiskey is so much better. Yeah. But yeah, so I can't remember how long after the invasion of Ukraine had happened, but a couple of different distilleries had done bottlings where they were giving either something like 80% of the profit for it or 100% over to one of the Ukraine relief charities. So drove past Cadenheads and there was a queue all the way up the street, and I said there and then, I went, I know for a fact I'm not going to get a bottle, totally fine. Went off, got my doctor's appointment, came back at maybe 12:30 and just walked into the shop to go and chat with the guys. I walk in, I was like, hi guys, how's it going? Bartender was like, Curtis, obviously we don't have any bottles left. I was like, hey, totally fair. But it's like, funny story though, we've actually lost a bottle. I was like, how do you lose a bottle? And he was like, we've no idea, but right now we're down a bottle. Right. I was like, okay. I was like, well, the bottle looks great. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you've got one in your window as your display bottle. I was like, it looks fantastic. And he goes, he just turns around the back.
I was cleaning your window.
I was there cleaning your windows for nothing, and then I spotted this bottle. So he shouts at the back and goes, Curtis found the bottle.
Thank God for our clean windows.
So I'm stood in the shop and there's still there's no queue, but people are still walking in and being like, hi, do you have a bottle of Springbank? Like, no. And he in the room goes, Curtis, obviously, unfortunately, we can't sell you the bottle, blah, blah, blah. But I was there picking up another bottle that I had bought. And then he just leans into me and goes, do you want me to stick the bottle in the bag and we'll just add it onto your bill? So,
oh, wow.
Obviously. So walked out there after, thankfully, not having a queue for an hour and a half and still got the bottle. But I've always said, I think it's one of those really interesting ones. And you never know. There was only a couple hundred bottles. Keep that for so long. They've also very clearly, there's a contract on the bottle that states if you sell this.
It's bad crack to do that.
They put on it if you sell this bottle, we will do everything in our power to basically stop you getting a hold of anything else, and then you've got your name signed on it. So I'll never sell it, but I also don't ever plan on opening it. I think it's a really interesting bottle, and hopefully when I'm older, you again, might have kids, they might ask about it and go, well, there was this time where the world was completely dead and none of us could do anything, and Russia decided to invade Ukraine.
There you go. Well, it's having bottles on the shelf that you wouldn't open. Fraser, what have you got? Or have you got one? Would you?
I do have some, maybe older bottlings,
bottles that
a
you
bit more sentimental.
Would you ever sell?
If I was in dire needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so there's a lot of stuff that I'd say everything I have I've planned to open at some point, whether that's a special event or for whatever reason. However, if I need a new boiler and I don't have a couple grand, I think that's a good thing to fall back on.
Jolly Topper had to do that.
Yeah, I can confirm new boilers aren't cheap.
And you get a lot of people.
Was it a Brora he had?
Can they say that?
He had a bottle. He said it on the podcast. That's terrible. I've forgotten. He said what bottle it was, and he said his biggest regret back then, and I think what he sold it for back then versus what it would be worth now. And he was like, but at the time I was in a situation where I needed.
Even if you settle down, get a family, buy a house, buy 3 cars, Cameron Ewan, and you need some extra cash, you'll sometimes sell some bottles.
Yeah. That's a good thing. When you look at the guy that bought a bottle of Macallan 18 every year from the day his son was born up until he was like 20 and sold that to use for a deposit for a house.
Yeah,
you know?
And it's one of these things where you just don't know. Like, you do get a lot of people, and you guys might probably get a lot more than I've had it, but there's been a few people contact me saying like, oh, what do you think of this bottle? What do you think of that bottle? What, should I buy this and keep it and then it'll be worth something? And you're like, I don't know, because at the end of the day it's only worth what someone's willing to pay for. And the other thing is that I remember I flirted with the idea when you're looking on the auctions and you're looking for bargains and you think to yourself, well, you might buy a bottle and what you got, like, what, I don't know what the most you could make. What would have, like, when things were good, what would somebody who's flipping a bottle, what kind of markup are you?
Really depends. Right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Macallan,
a couple thousand on a bottle, and you hold it for a couple of decades, it can get a couple thousand in return. But you're sometimes looking at a couple hundred most.
But then I suppose I think probably the biggest one you'll see flipping is people flipping Springbank, and that if you look at
that one's crazy.
If you look at the 10-year-old cask strength sherry series that's been going on, those sell out infuriatingly quickly. You don't even see them in some shops, and then they're selling on auction for 400, 500 quid, and they probably sold for 90.
Yeah, I was going to say, Fraser's fortunate to have the whole set.
I've got the first 3.
Have you?
I've got 1.
Alright.
Everyone's looking very concerned. What's that, mate?
That's alright. That's just checking your microphone's working there. I think it's okay now. But I mean, Chuck, have you got bottles that you would ever keep on the shelves, or?
I mean, I've got too much stuff. I was like I've run out of
Glenn
space.
Talker's you're just waiting for the moment that Glenn Talker's becomes in.
He's not Talker's just shut.
It's not easy. It's not easy being the premier Glenn Talker's collection. Yeah, I mean, I buy tons of stuff, and I like opening stuff, but I also just sometimes like looking at them, which is super, super sad.
I feel like
it's funny. We talked about it with the Whiskey Collectors Club competitions guys when they came on, and that's what they talked about how they first got started. They went in a family friend of theirs, and he had this huge collection of whiskey and things like that, and we'll talk about, because you worked at Scotch Whisky Experience as well, and you look at
that's never been spoken about on this podcast.
No, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that.
What's that?
But that collection that they've got is it the largest collection the Brazilian? He passed away recently.
It's not the largest anymore, actually. The largest collection is now in Argentina.
Really?
A guy came and visited the Scotch Whisky Experience and decided, why should Scotland have the largest collection of Scotch whisky?
Yeah.
We want this in Argentina, and they've got 4,000 something bottles now. But
I'm sure there's a few folk.
It was at the time.
All Johnny Walker.
It's literally just all Johnny Walker Red. Actually, they found the cheapest they could and went for it. No, really, really cool collection they've got in Argentina. But the Clive Udez collection at Sui is spectacular. There's no other word.
When you see it, but like we've got guys like shout out to Scott Moore. On the Whiskey Stories Facebook page, and Bob Cutting as well. You know, I think they've probably got collections that could probably rival quite a few.
Sui's one's 3,000. I think it's like 3,000 and something.
Really?
That they've got.
And a Haddington House is in there. There's a Haddington House bottle.
Well, I've got a story about that. So obviously Angus is in Japan.
Yes.
He sent a photo the other day about his Dunbar whiskey.
Yes.
And I thought, fuck it, I'm having that.
You're having it?
So 40 quid from Germany. It arrived yesterday. I was going to bring it in, but hopefully if he brings a Haddington House, I'll bring my Dunbar and we'll compare finally which of these Slovakian blends is better.
Yeah, there you go. It's fascinating to see that. But Scott Moore, big shout out to Scott Moore actually, because as the host of a fairly decent whiskey-based podcast, It should have really been up to me to wish everybody International Scotch Day. Which according to Scott Moore was 3 days ago, who wished everybody on the Whisky Stories Facebook page. And I kind of looked and I went, shit. So thanks for that, Scott. But yeah, pub cutting, it's great. And I think I've got a few bottles as well, but I don't know. I've always been, whiskey was made to be drunk, and that's how, you've got to drink it, and it's finding the right moment. But then at the same time, there's also bottles that you just, there's bottles that you can have that, the 2 bottles that I've got in the house where I really don't know whether I'll open them is, first one, I'd love to try it. I will open it. I'm going to have to open it. But when my grandfather retired from Ballantyne's as a director, he was given a special bottling.
That's cool.
And it's got his name on it and everything like that. Now, he retired in 1990 or 1991, just before he died. So, 2 things. Number one, what's in that? Right?
There'll be some interesting things.
Yeah, what's in that? And secondly, but it's the sentimental side of it as well. It's that pride of place on my granny's. He died in 1991, so I didn't get to know him. I was only 2 or 3 or whatever, 2 years old. But basically, I could just remember he had his retire. He got a decanter and he got his bottle, and that's that pride and place on my granny's. Every time I went to my granny's house, that was there with that. There was a photo of him when he was at work. One of these ones at a desk he got taken. So it's always there, and now it's in my shelf as well with his decanters. Now I've used the decanters plenty of times, but it's that bottle I'm thinking. And the other one was the Daft Mill 15, and it was actually, I don't know who it was that would have served me. It was at Scotch, and I'd heard about Daft Mill releasing their 15-year-old, the first time they'd ever done an age statement. And going to cause a bit of a riot here actually in a minute, but basically you put the bottle down on the table. I was with my wife, my current wife I should say. I was with my current wife, and we're sitting there, and I'd asked, and it was the first time I'd seen this thing online, like Daft Mill, and from being from Fife and stuff like that, and family are up that neck of the woods, Cooper area, Souness and stuff, and I was a bit like, this Daft Mill, I've never heard of it before, wasn't big into whiskey, this was a good few years ago now, and I went in and I said to Cam, or Ross it might have been, have you got any Daft Mill? And I was given a sort of like, oh yes. And I'm nodding, I went.
Secret handshake.
A real sort of, and he said, and because it had gone to.
So, a connoisseur has walked in.
Yeah, really made me feel. That was probably the first time of the under the table kind of dram sort of
he
stuff.
knows his.
But this is a good example. So Daft Mill, when I started in Scotch, Daft Mill was a bottle. We had a couple of bottles that were not on the menu and not really to be sold. The sort of thing that someone would come in and ask for, and you'd say, yes, we've got one bottle. We can only give it to you if you ask for it. Daft Mill now, we can get cases of this stuff.
Loads of it.
And
to the point.
Well,
it's too much.
The first bottle of Daft Mill we got in the bar, we couldn't get Daft Mill
for love nor money.
For love nor money as well. One of the Cuthberts was staying in the hotel.
Really?
Came down to the bar and said, "You've not got any Daft Mill," and we're like, "We can't get any." Went back up to his room, came back, put a bottle on the table.
So the Cuthbert's being one of the farmers, the brothers.
Yeah, one of the 2 brothers of the distillery.
farm.
Went back up to his room, got a bottle from his room, and said, "You can have that one."
I didn't even know that. That's really cool. That's way cool.
But that 15-year-old that went to Ballot to buy the bottles. I missed out that, but a bottle was like £300 odd or something like that. Yeah. And one of those ones where some people would have bought 2 or 3 out of the Ballot, or got and would have gone straight to the auctions and had them at £500, £600, £700.
Yeah.
Plus whatever. But I remember, so I'm saying that I've got this Daft Mill, and I was like, oh yes, you know what you're talking about. Yeah. And basically put it down, and I'm sort of, it must have been Cam or something, or maybe Ross, and they were saying about this is hen's teeth, you can't really get this, we only actually offer it to people that ask. And as he's talking to me, I'm looking at the bottom, I turn it around and I'm just looking at it, it says clearly, and it's on the label, the malt barley used in this was the last malted barley to be used from the Robert Kilgour Company in Kirkcaldy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've since lost a fortune on buying up as many Daft Mill bottles because it's got family name on it. It's the malting.
That's cool,
the malt. Oh, I couldn't believe it, honestly. And of course, my current wife, who doesn't get whiskey at all, I'm like, look at this. And she's like, great, cool. And it was just.
Do we really need 8 of them?
Why
I
are you
suddenly
wasting
realised
our money?
that so I bought like 2006 summer editions. I've got a bottle of the fifth. I went on the auction. I don't know what I spent actually, but that first batch
of the sake of your marriage, maybe don't.
Yeah,
don't
exactly. But that 15-year-old, I've got that there as well, and it means a lot. But at the same time, I am 100% certain that will never leave my house. But I'm also fairly certain at some point that bottle's going to have to get emptied.
Bottles like that are cool to have because, like you're saying, like you've got the one that was your grandfather's.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that, like, you know, your kid gets married.
Yeah.
And you open that up there, and it's also like having a little bit of a memory, and like he's there with it, and that's the whole point of whiskey.
Yeah.
So
100%.
That's a fantastic thing to have.
Yeah. But none of us would flip a bottle.
I've sold bottles before.
Have you?
Actually, I'll tell you what. George was talking about.
Mention the Broda.
Huh? No, I know.
Oh, there's a story.
Go on. I want people to like me. But still bad. But I got a Macallan Genesis, the first distillery exclusive Macallan.
Right.
It's like, I think it was about 550 quid. It's probably the most I'd ever spent on a bottle of whiskey at the time.
At the time.
I love the add-on at the time.
At the time.
Edit that out.
He's got a job now, eh?
Rake it in.
But I sold that on auction and I got a pretty penny.
And do you buy that purely for profiting? Like, was that speculative to accumulate? So you're talking about the most expensive now.
To be fair, that I bought purely for profit because it came in a box that smelled like a new car, and I was like, I can't keep this.
But when you're because bear in mind that you're buying the most expensive bottle of whiskey, you're buying it at that point.
Yeah.
And we've all probably spent maybe what we would argue is too much on whiskey at times. And it's that trade-off of going, it's really, really good whiskey, and I'm really going to enjoy it. Because
I'll be honest with you. I didn't.
Second puberty.
Yeah, sorry. I got really excited there for a sec. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think Macallan Genesis was going to be very good. I just thought it was a gimmick kind of bullshit thing.
So you bought it to sell it?
So I bought it to sell it.
So when you're going
550 quid.
So you're 550 quid, that's expensive. But I know that
make money.
in a few months' time I can put that back on the market.
Well, I put it on auction like immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
And you made a big return on it?
I paid for a new bathroom.
Wow.
Oh, that's basically the story of Macallan, to be honest.
Yeah.
You look at the Macallan Distillery World Series.
But also, I really needed a new bathroom.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, if anyone from Scotch knows about my bathroom,
I don't know if I want to know about this bathroom. Yeah. Tell us about the Broda, don't tell us about your bathroom. But
the bathroom story is more relatable.
Like you've been in my flat, is it worse than mine?
I know the bathroom story, yes, it's worse.
Well, because it's an area of interest, but you've got to think about it. Like,
but I don't generally go around buying bottles.
You're not intending to keep on.
No,
an opportunity.
My philosophy is generally if everything goes right, I'll drink them all, and if everything goes wrong, I'll sell them.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, it's like having stock. You know, it's for most of us understand whiskey better than stock.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I suppose then it's what your justification of the moment is. And it's like, what is the right moment to open this, and what is the? I think we had a bottle of Valentine's 30, and then it was the first Boxing Day, Christmas.
Great day.
Where of COVID. So was it,
not so great.
No, it wasn't. But I think you were allowed to meet. One household was allowed to meet.
From afar, just wave at each other from hilltops.
Yeah, well, it was. But I think I can't remember that. I don't want to out myself as being some sort of rule breaker, but I'm sure we stuck to the rules. But the bottom line is, we shared a bottle of Valentine's 30. It was like a unique.
Wish it was in your bubble during COVID. That sounds great.
Well, it was a unique situation, but because it was just like, look, none of us have spent Christmas Day together. And I think we were able to get together on Boxing Day and just say like, this is a surreal. It was a surreal moment.
They did lift the restrictions over like Christmas Day.
There was something about it, but we couldn't travel with anyway. But my brother, my cousin, and myself, we were the three of us spent Christmas Day all individually. Well, my brother and I spent it together. My cousin was on his own, and we said Boxing Day we'll be able to get together and we shared the bottle of Valentine's.
When it's Jack's birthday, we'll meet up. That's
what we'll do. That's it.
I'm kind of I've always kind of shout on Valentine's, apart from the fact that Glenn Talkers is in it. But Fraser Robson, also from Scotch, he is.
Wait, hang on, is this another guy from Scotch we're going to have to interview?
Yeah, of course you will.
Oh, God.
He's the OG. He was there from day one.
Day one, right? He's the one we've got to get. He's the shiny.
I was just say, was he not?
You'd also love him. Yeah, he was also who hired Cam. You'd love him because now that he's a father of two, he buys like affordable stuff off auctions, and he's got, I think it's about a century, maybe a century worth of Valentines going back every single year.
Wow!
I went out to visit him just after I came back from my trip, and brought a bunch of stuff that I'd had. Most of the stuff I kind of brought for you to taste, and he was like, "Well, I need to give you stuff." And he gave me a bunch of samples, and one of them was a Valentine's 25-year-old. Oh, wow. Which I had and was fantastic.
Yeah.
No, also, a massive fan of Ardmore, which Cam will never accept as being a respectable distillery to him.
Ardmore.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I was saying it was going to kick off alright is because the reason Valentine's I always find is so good, particularly the age stuff, is only 5 grade.
Glentockers, eh?
Best grade in the world, 5 barley.
Because it's people with 6 fingers.
That's it. That's what I did it.
You're not missing a single grain there.
Fields are riddled with rocks.
But Curtis, so after you were an actor, after you were a window cleaner, after you were at HMRC, after you were at Uskebe, is there anything else we've missed?
No, there'd be a couple of things before that, but it's probably best to avoid those, to be fair.
Right. Your Scotch Whisky Experience.
Yeah, I went up to Swee. I mean, Swee's been spoken about loads on this podcast, and it's for good reason. You know, Swee is, I will openly state, one of the best places I've ever worked.
Yeah.
They build up a lot of great people. Like, you look at the industry now, Swee is fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you've got brand ambassadors, global brand ambassadors, UK ambassadors. You've got people that are started their own companies in different countries. For some reason, you know, they hired me. So it's a fantastic place to work. You know, you're working under an amazing group of people. I mean, you've got 4 keepers of the Quake, 2 masters of the Quake that are directly above you. You've got a great management team.
What's the difference between a keeper of the Quake and a master of the Quake?
Master is
because we're going to
after you become a keeper, you basically get given the opportunity to go into an even smaller circle of them.
Whisky Stories podcast. I mean, pretty soon I reckon. What we've done for talking about Scotch whisky.
That's basically all I know. Is it's basically a step up.
I immediately regret asking that question, considering how it went last time when you understood what that.
There's a new obsession here, which is
master. Keep the Quake, and then it's an even smaller Quake.
Tiny little Quake. Yeah. Right, you get one of the barrels that we used to get used for the barrel ride.
That's where they hold all the meetings.
Right, we really need to Chuck, I can't have you slaughtering the keepers of the Quake on this podcast as a future keeper of the Quake.
I'm going to say though, that barrel ride was phenomenal.
Yeah.
If you were a guest.
So
I would have burnt that thing down happily when I worked there.
So
was it just the screams of joy that drove you insane? Was it?
God, that thing. We worked on a very, very tight schedule. You're running 5 tours an hour.
5 tours an hour.
Everything is like preset. You've got you've got to be in and out of rooms at a specific time. That barrel ride, if it breaks down, you've got your entire tour trapped on this barrel for 15 minutes. You're then rushing them upstairs to run through a preset kind of like tour in the first 2 rooms that's all like automated, and you're stood there with a tour guide popping their head through the window going, "Can you hurry the fuck up, please?" So it was the worst thing ever. It was great in terms of like guests loved it. It was a really cool way to talk about maturation and things like that. It sucked for the intermediate period where we got rid of it and we were setting up the new tour, because we all got set a challenge, which was we had to run through the entire production process in 2 minutes.
I could do it in like 5 seconds.
So that was always good fun.
Easy.
The hack is basically you make beer and then you distill it and stick it in a cask. There you go. Happy days.
That's it.
But no, Swee was great for me. It was really where I learned what I would say most of my whiskey knowledge up until moving to Scotch, where you get to focus more on kind of premium products. You get to spend a lot more time focusing on the history of whiskey. But Swee's great if you're unsure what you want to do.
And are you I always think to myself, for for people who are tour guides and stuff like that, there is just too many areas in whiskey and the process of whiskey and everything like that to actually be able to be geeky and cover absolutely everything. So there'll be like we get people on the podcast that will say, I want to know all about copper contact and worm tubs. And then you'll get somebody else that'll tell you like, oh no, I'll tell you all about sourcing wood and Jerez and wine and all of that can do. And then you get other people that can say, no, I'll tell you all about the history and of all this. You get people who can tell you all 13 of the glens of Speyside.
More than that, no?
Well, I don't know.
But you've set yourself up there for that. List them off.
Right, okay.
But when you get into working in Scotch Whisky Experience, then do you almost pick a sort of area that you want to focus on and just really make that your niche?
Yeah, we're given almost like full autonomy over how we want to take our tours. And there's a benefit to that. So when you first start out and you're kind of like new to it, you get given a script. And the script is like the basic tour, but it's bullet points. So it's basically like, we want you to say this because it matches up with what's being shown on the TV. And then they go, the rest of it's up to you. And then once you've been there for a while, we've got 2 exams when you're working at SWE. Once you go up to being senior tour guide, you then get the opportunity to go on to do what's called the Platinum Tour. Platinum Tour is where you've got full autonomy, and it's fantastic. You're doing a 90-minute tour in the building, and you're sometimes, depending on how well you get on with whoever's picking the whiskey, you can pick what's going in there.
Oh, really?
And you get to focus on different things. So, like when I was coming up and starting doing my Platinums, one of the first ones that I watched was Jake. I'm also going to add in here, thank you so much for slagging him last week.
So Jake Adcook.
Yeah, Jake Adcook, the man that doesn't like to wear a shirt. Thank you for putting that in last week. I really appreciate that.
He had one button.
To be fair, I think if he could, I mean, to be fair, he's got a decent
physique. It wasn't the top button either.
He's got a decent physique. He goes to the gym a lot, but I think if he could, he'd be walking around shirtless the entire time. Love you, Jake, and I did say I was going to slag you on this podcast, so you're welcome.
There you go.
I watched his for one of my like training ones. Jake focused a lot on kind of grain whiskey and
because he's production. So he's just mad on that.
I hate to admit it, where he gets to listen to it, but he's incredibly intelligent and he really knows his stuff. So he focused a lot on that, and it was actually him that got me interested in what's maybe one of my, at the moment, favourite things in whiskey, which is Angus coffee. Really interesting guy.
Okay, so the guy that distills
patented the coffee still in 1830. But before that, and this is what I found really interesting, he assisted the government in writing the 1823 Excise Act. There you
go.
So, like, really interesting guy, really interesting life.
Angus would have been able to tell you where he went to school if he was here.
I was going to say, he built a settled argument. He could settle the debate of where this man was born.
He's got a really funny first name.
Load of toad chuck, come on.
So, sorry. Jake focused a lot on that. You got other people that focused lots on, the different styles of whiskey that you get to make and things like that, and then I came along and just waffled on for 90 minutes.
Did you ever just walk in and go, "Hi, I'm Curtis Moran. You may remember me from such TV program."
Every single tour I did, I had that and had a headshot sign just waiting for
just
somebody.
Somebody recognised
you never knew.
You're a barman.
Shot in one hand, CV.
Exactly.
And a chamois under his back pocket.
I was waiting on the day that we finally got a producer in that I could be like, it's been great to meet you. Thanks so much. There's my headshot.
I mean, Fraser, I suppose it's very similar to yourselves when you guys started out in Scotch, getting started. We've spoken to a lot of people, I think yourselves included, will have mentioned this, is like when you've got to do a tasting, you'll pick what you know, right? So pick 3 or 4, pick 5 or 6 drams that you absolutely know, and you know you can sell to somebody and you can give them the full spiel, you'll memorise everything. I mean, that's basically what you've had to do as well. And are you production history, or do you have to, with it being Scotch, do you have to be a bit of everything?
Depends who you're talking to.
Right.
So for our kind of entry, you're more just doing a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Making sure they understand what's going on. For kind of upper ranges, depending on, sometimes you get folk that are really interested, and you'll spend an hour talking about barley.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get people that are just flexing.
Yeah.
Just want to spend loads of money. But no, you do tend to go for what you're familiar with. Like I remember when Curtis joined us, we had to ban Glen Scotia Double Cask. Because that's one of the whiskies that's sweet. Yeah. And we used to have people coming in, they're like, I want to try something from Campbelltown. And he'd be like, Glen Scotia Double Cask. We're like, it's a £7 whiskey.
Yeah.
Like, stop giving this to people.
So that was where Dario gave me the best advice. He was like, pick 5 distilleries.
Yeah.
Memorise them.
Yeah. That's it. And you guys used to, is it the Whiskey Yearbook, is it, that you guys...
It's the Bible.
Yes.
That thing is the holy grail. It's
is there a new one out yet?
Yeah, 2025 is out.
Really?
I'm going to say something about it. I think it's getting worse.
Okay.
Just not as much information. They've taken away the closed distilleries.
Right.
They're reducing a lot of the geeky stuff, perhaps.
Right.
2016 for me was like, that was the year that I'm genuinely upset. There was a guy I worked with when I moved to the Last Word who was really interested in whiskey, and I was like, I'm gonna let you use this. It was my 2016, and it was like dog-eared, written in stuff. I'm so upset. I just didn't get it back, and I'm like, it's like probably the book in my entire life that I like really, really loved using, like, because I read it constantly. It was in absolute tatters as well.
Yeah, but it's so helpful because
it's so useful.
It's all the information that you need in one page, effectively, isn't it? And it gives you all the sort of facts and stats. But
gives you all the bullet points you want, and then you can find out more there afterwards.
Yeah. And I actually, after I'd hosted that tasting last week, I came in and saw you boys, and I did have a bit of a flex.
It came in my swagger.
Because
it's like Conor McGregor walking into the bar. Maybe not the correct person to talk about.
Right now, the worst person you could have picked.
I managed to make it through the revolving door, so come on, but without fighting anyone. But basically, Finn Thompson has, when he did with our Indie Bottle Spotlight, and it's worth listening back to that. He is a guy who is, as a family, is ingrained in whiskey history. Through his great, I think 7 times great grandfather is what I can go back. And one of the really cool things is his whatever that generation was had a distillery, and Alfred Barnard visited the distillery. And one of the things Finn does these great tastings whenever he does them is he doesn't just bring his family history to talk about, but he actually brings loads of stuff with him. Ben Eagles bottles, the old decanters that were like old eagles that you pull the head off and stuff like that. He brought a really cool, because his grandfather ended up having I should listen back to the podcast to get this right, but his grandfather was like, he was a wholesale rep for whiskey. You know, he would buy whiskey and sell it, and he had price lists from the 60s, 70s and 80s with him, so he was handing them out so you could see what prices of things were back then. But the really cool thing that he brought in was Alfred Barnard first edition.
Oh,
yeah, there you go. Aye.
Damn.
Yeah, really. He wouldn't let anyone near it with a dram in their hand. Basically, just had to. But that's a book that Angus, I think it was Mike Brown, brought it in for the first time and talked about it, and it's a fascinating book. When you actually. But would you go into that depth, looking at Alfred Barnard's book to get some wee snippets from distilleries and stuff like that as well?
For the real history, why not? I've got one in the house to look at every now and then.
The interesting thing about that one was the story that another Swede Illuminati.
Like I say, I love that. The whiskey industry is run by them. I think that's a good representation.
They all do a hand signal like a bottle shake. But
you're getting too serious now.
But
that's secrets.
Alex Thompson, but he talked about the fact that like he's at Glenturret, and he's like the Glenturret distillery since Alfred Barnard's book came out, believed that its date came back from that because Alfred Barnard asked a worker, and he was like, this distillery's been going from this date. And they were just like, and then once it went into print, that was it, forever, until somebody in 2019 decided, let's actually look into this. And they established, actually, hang on a minute, we're much
mentally. There's probably quite a lot of that.
It must have been loads of that. He must have been absolutely raging for that gig. He was like, I'm trying to get a job back. It must be. It's been here since I was born.
Literally, I'm trying to work with it.
like, time didn't exist before I existed. Yeah.
That works out perfectly for a question that I have.
Okay.
And this is a question that's been posed to everyone in Scotch and every single distillery that I've been to. Don't yet have an answer, so that's the only reason I want to bring it up here, is to see if anyone that listens or anyone that is involved has an answer.
Funny.
So far, the first ever Bobby or Porteous mill, I would like to find out what distillery had the first. So far, the oldest that I've been able to find is Glenturret.
Okay.
If anyone can find one that predates that, please can you send the answer?
Talk me through what's this?
The Bobby or Porteous mills.
So the mills, so that's what mills.
The company that made them so damn well that they put themselves out of business.
When did they put themselves out of business?
That's going. Oh, you're asking me a question there. That's what kind of 19.
Do you think what 80s or so?
Yeah. I thought I was going to think
before
earlier.
then.
When you say
so lots of distilleries had the early 1900s, and then you just don't really hear.
You don't hear anything about
much about the company after then.
Someone had to have.
So how did they put themselves out of business then?
Because
they made them so well.
The machine was designed so perfectly that it never broke.
Effectively.
I was going to say
Genuinely, right?
I was going to say when Eduardo started, he gave a very interesting story. So I can't say that it's fact, but he said that it's the reason why light bulbs today are designed to break.
Oh, really?
After so many years. I can't remember who he said, but he said someone perfected a light bulb that would never ever break. And they looked at Porteous and went, well, I'd like to keep making money, so let's have them break every 10 years.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Yeah. No, on a separate note, just by chance, I ended up getting chatting to a couple of guys from Elgin, up in Speyside. They were talking away. And they lived up there, and I was saying, oh God, do you like a dram then? And I was praying, so they were like, I would like a dram, and they do like Whisky Wednesdays up there where they all get together, and it's just like he showed me pictures of every 4 or 5 Whisky Wednesdays, some wild whiskey that they're getting up there, and they said that's just like every 2 weeks we do a Whisky Wednesday, all just 5 of us get together, and that's what we do. But his son, who being his sort of early 20s, and he's an engineer, or training to be an engineer, and he was talking about like all the boys he went to school with and everything like that, and he said there's a lot of guys that are like boys in the trade, and a lot of the boys got themselves into Forsyths and all these places. So, and he said that he said I've got these boys I went to school with that are from Elgin. He's like, and he's got the accent, I'm not doing it, but he's like a lot of them are just pure nutters. That's how he described his pals. So are all these guys that are like in the trades and stuff, and have been, I don't know, what would you have to, would it be a plumber? That would probably be the sort of trade that would be associated with
becoming a coppersmith?
Coppersmith maybe, but basically
no shit.
I don't know, but basically he said they all went and got trades, and a lot of these guys at school went and got trades, and they were all told get into the trade and then get into whiskey on maintenance and if you're in Speyside, but he said there's boys at his age that get flown over to Japan. Because the Japanese industry will be saying like, right, well,
we want our first house still in our distillery.
And then
we need our plumbing sorted out.
We just said Angus the Whisky Fan. Bring your best plunger.
There's a second business opportunity if you go to Japan. Just take a plunger.
But like they were saying that these guys are just lads that left school, got into the trades, ended up working for somebody like Forsyth or another engineering company up in Elgin. In Speyside, and if you got in with if your company that you work for, and the thing about whiskey is it's so great is I bet you there'll be like legacy engineering jobs that are no use anywhere else except for in whiskey. Like there'll be like the guy that instead of your mill that you're talking about, there must be something else that there'll be.
But I suppose there's not got to be a lot of people who are working on getting copper moving the way it does when it comes to stills, or even kind of finding the right places to bang them in and things like that, just to get the right amount of reflux and these kind of things, and then working with line arms and figuring out angles. So yeah, I mean it's a fairly niche job. I mean, the same thing could be said about coopers. I mean, it's
what a job though.
Especially in the UK, it's a finite job, and it's a very, very hands-on aspect of the whole industry. I mean, if we didn't have casks that held liquid correctly, perhaps they good.
We've increased in coopers, by the way. I was looking at stats on this. Apparently, I think it was last year there was 250.
Yeah.
Whereas now, or maybe last 5 years there's 250. We're now up at a whole 300.
Well, that's what's great about the whisky industry. Like you look at when we went to Porterleith Distillery, you're looking at a modern vertical distillery. You're looking at even they've gone for the modernisation of it. It's vertical. It's got so much stuff going on. Even they've got
the coolest washbacks you've ever seen. And I know that is the saddest thing to say, but it's honestly true.
What do you like so much about the washbacks? What is it that
you can stand under them?
You can stand underneath them. They are welded. They're hovering washbacks. They are like welded, like 4 flights above the ground.
And was it the washbacks that they were talking about where some of them are closer to the walls which get the weather? Like even there's like
so when I did the 2 they weren't in production yet.
So Ian Stirling was saying that now like there's an Angus kind of cynically said like there's a money spinner in the future you can get like washback 4 this bottle was all from washback 4 because it's the closest to the corner which gets the sea breeze coming up the Firth of Forth or something
wonderful like Firth of Forth.
There you go. But
downwind from the sewage treatment plant.
Exactly. You might notice this one is slightly more manure forwards.
But the thing about it is like that's what's great about the whisky industry is that you can modernise a lot, and when you go to Diageo and you go to the big powerhouses, these massive distilleries that are just built, they're not open to the public, they're built for production, and they will have put in so many modern things that will help maximise production, this, that, and the next thing. But it still takes a person to build a cask by hand. You can't automate that. It's the oldest ages, like even things like you go distilleries now will have computer screens where they'll tell you pressure points are here, this, that, and the next thing, and on all the processes go in there. But like, doesn't matter how modern your distillery is, doesn't matter what it is, and some distilleries will try and make themselves look nice and cosy and old school and stuff like that, but deep down you know that in the back end they've probably maximised as much as they possibly could for production with bringing it up to speed and all that kind of stuff.
It's the cool thing about it's also the cool thing about seeing the contrast where you can see a distillery that has maybe automated as much as they could, and then you can go to a distillery like Dornoch where it's like a guy in what used to be
shipping container, no?
Well, that's warehouse number 1. It's like a meat container that they put soil in the bottom of, and then the distillery used to be the fire department, like going back to like the 1700s, and it's just a guy just figuring it out. And then do amazing stuff.
And I think like we actually spoke a little bit about it before we started recording. We were talking about the differences in the whisky industry now, and there's challenges, and we've mentioned them, and we've talked a little bit about it this year. 2025 is going to be a very interesting year in the whisky industry. That we're hearing a lot about the costs associated with whisky and all that kind of stuff as well. But the other side of it is we've seen such a burst of new distilleries coming through, and one of the great things about that is that like some of these distilleries, you're drinking Holyrood. Right now.
I've drank.
You've drank, you've finished your Holyrood, but it's things like they are not in the, like you go back 25, 30 years, distilleries that were opening were about mass production, about getting into the blenders, getting the consistency and all that. Whereas now the artisanal side of things is massive, isn't it?
I think that's an interesting side of the industry now, and it was touched upon on your last podcast where they're talking about, we are within Scotch, we do have limitations. Yeah, we have them for a reason. We are, the biggest selling whiskey in the world, but within that, there is still this kind of desire for experimentation, and people want to see what we can do. And it's interesting now to see these newer distilleries trying to push the bounds. I mean, one of the really cool things about whiskey is we're at 64 years now of commercialised single malt whiskey. We're still in the the early days.
When you base it on that, when you look at how long whiskey's been going,
we're so young into that side of it that now it is cool seeing these distilleries pop up that are saying, well, let's see how far we can push this. Let's see what different barley strains do. Let's see what different yeasts do.
Well, it's almost like going back to basics.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I spoke about before we started.
That's where we started.
I was going to say, a distillery I'm incredibly excited about is Kythe Distillery. It's going to be opening up in, I think it's this year actually, they're meant to start production.
So where's that about Kythe?
You're asking the person that is absolutely awful with geography, so I will turn that over to Fraser. I think they're in the Highlands somewhere.
It's in Scotland.
Right, there we go.
They're in the Highlands of Scotland, but like they're going to focus on like
proper whiskey
fire
for proper
stills. They're going to use barley strains that haven't been used since the 60s.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be cool. That's going to be interesting. Like their whole motto is we don't care about how much we can produce. We care about how good the whiskey tastes.
Well, that's it.
And from a whiskey nerd point of view, that's incredibly exciting.
Well, it goes back to like the Daft Mill situation there. Like they are, you know, and there's great stories of distilleries that are like, oh, we still have the farm that was originally being used for the farmer was making the whiskey and things like that. And it's a nice story, but actually, like, you know, the Cuthbert brothers own that farm and they're farming first.
Yeah.
It's about, you know, and what's great is they decided to, I mean, I don't know how much they would have spent to build a distillery in their sheds and what have you, but at the same time it was never about building a brand and a business. It was, but Chuck's got something to say.
That was a huge smile.
Came to life.
No, so there was when Daft Mill were doing their first release, they hosted a tasting at Roma Whiskies, and I was lucky enough to be there. There's one of the Cuthbert brothers, I can't remember which one, and they were talking about, someone asked the question, like, why have you done this release now? And it was 12-year-old Daft Mill was the very first release, and he was like, to be honest with you, like, we've been distilling in the summer and we've been distilling in the winter, and we've had to move it all by wheelbarrow, all the barley in the wheelbarrow. And we're just fairly sick of it, so we thought we'd do a release so we could buy a malt bin. So that's the main reason we've done the release. That is the most
10 out of 10.
That's the most farmer crack I've ever heard.
That is fantastic.
It only took us like a decade and a bit, but we figured we'd just invest on the profits of this release.
Poor John that's having to like carry that wheelbarrow's nearly dead now. So.
But it creates this feeling, doesn't it? It creates this want and need, and it's like we've talked to Conor O'Keefe at Holyrood before, and it's just like you just want to try it because it's same with Annandale, albeit Annandale's a sort of single cask, single malt distillery, and you just wonder, are Annandale going to change tact? Are they going to start saying we're just going to have to bring out a solid core range release rather than just continuously saying this release is
they've got the man of words and the man of sword,
but even then
there's still single cask.
It's always single cask, it's always different barrels. It finally gives me a chance to also slag off Jeff because he used to work there as well.
There you go.
Cameron McPherson.
His name is known as Cameron McPherson, but
his actual name.
He went to school with Fraser and Ross.
Aye.
He's known as Jeff, so
there you go.
I'm not sorry at all.
Essentially,
to put that out there.
During high school, Cameron went to the same school, and one day somebody decided he looked like a Jeff.
That was him.
And he got called Jeff.
There you go.
I worked with him at I worked with him at Swee, found that out, and I refused to ever let it go. Great guy, but he worked with them. That was his first brand ambassador role, and really interesting distillery. Like really cool things that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are fast approaching that time where we do get to ask our guest their what 3 drams. So, Curtis, tell us what's your first of your what 3 drams?
The first one for basically everyone and anyone that knows me is the reason I fell in love with whiskey. I was 18 years old, and the first proper dram of whiskey that I ever tried was the Glendronach 18.
Glendronach 18.
And it is still to this day my absolute favourite. So if Glendronach are ever hiring,
there you go.
Give me a shout.
Glendronach 18, there they are. Lovely. What was the background to that? Like, did you?
I was 18 years old. I was dating what would be my first serious proper relationship.
Current relationship? Or
it is not my current relationship, no, but we were together for 4 years. actually bought an engagement ring and all that sort of stuff. So it got pretty serious. But her older brother was welcoming me into the family.
Right.
So we're sat having dinner, and he cracked open a bottle of whiskey and kind of, again, just being really, really nice, and was like, welcome in. And it was a Glendronach 18. Fell in love with it. So still to this day, Glendronach are my absolute favourite distillery. I could talk about them for hours.
They'll never leave you.
Never,
Girlfriends come and go, but Glendronach.
That's exactly it. So yeah, it's one, that thankfully, sent me on this entire journey. It's the reason that I was willing to accept the job at Uskeby, and now I get to annoy the living daylights out of Fraser and Cameron.
That's worked out really well for us. Glendronach becoming more and more premium, but Curtis loves selling it.
Hang on, your mic's up. Curtis loves selling it.
Have I been on all day?
Your mic's working now. Right, there you go.
Good.
I adore it. So
you
will never ever find a day that there's not Glendronach in Scotch.
There you go. Right, dram number 2.
Dram number 2, I'm actually going to give Fraser some props here, because it is.
I'll put the mic down.
Your mic's fine.
This is maybe one of the only times you'll hear me say something nice about him publicly. So when I was told I had the job at Scotch, I was incredibly happy. It had been a dream job of mine for a couple of years, and my dad is completely teetotal, so he doesn't drink, and as you can tell, he's incredibly proud of me for that reason, that I now sell alcohol. But he came up, lives down in England now. He came up to see me and wanted to see where I was going to work.
Yeah.
So I took him into Scotch. It was my final evening being able to show up into the bar.
Yeah.
Not working there, and we were sat down. Fraser put out a kind of little tasting for me, and my dad was drinking ginger beer. And then I'd had my first 3 jams. They're all fantastic. Had a tomatin something or other, which was done in.
Can't mind.
It was
really like Curtis, so I'm not sure what I gave him.
Exactly. It was a tomatin sherry. Let me try a couple of things, but then he came over to the table and said, "It's really nice to have you at the team. Welcome on," and gave me a tomatin 36.
There you go, Fraser.
I'd like to state this was leftover stock from a previous tasting.
Yes, I was going to say, before he gets in any trouble, that was
lovely.
It was free stock, but and that was one of the times my dad turned around and went, "Wow, you've actually done well."
Aye.
And I was like,
"That's lovely."
Surprisingly, yeah. So that meant a lot. Fraser's became, unfortunately, a good friend of mine now.
There you go.
I thought it'd be nice though.
Aye, good. Cheers, mate.
But great dram, fantastic whiskey.
Yeah.
Shout out to Matin. It's actually the pride and joy in my collection at the moment. A bottle of Tomatin 36. So.
I think you said it on this podcast, it would ruin whiskey for you.
Oh, yes.
It was my favourite. I've now changed over to Bunhaven 40 as well. Sorry.
Buna 40 though, also 10 out of 10. What a dram.
Is that number 3 or no?
No, I was going to say it works out perfectly. Bunhaven is my third. So Weems done a series of bottlings, 1990 bottlings. One of them was Bunhaven called Peach and Ginger Fizz, and still to this day, it is one of the most incredible whiskies I've ever had. Where it genuinely does taste exactly like it's described.
Peach and ginger fizz.
It is peach and ginger fizz. It
Wow.
is phenomenal. I'm truly gutted we can't get any more bottles in the bar, and I'm considering spending a lot more than a human being should just to own one of them. So
if anyone's got a bottle of that on their shelf and they want to flip it on
there you go. Let me know. I'm sure we can come to some sort of agreement. But fantastic whiskey. They done a series of them. I think
that was cool. No, they done. I think it was 6 or 7, maybe 8 different casks, but they were all sister casks. So distillate from the same production that went into the same form of American hogshead, then left for the same amount of time, and then bottled on the same day.
Oh wow!
27 years.
Cool.
Yeah, we had 6 of them, and I managed to get a 7th that we didn't have.
You got what was the one you got?
That's currently sitting on the bar Nuno Mass, because I done a tasting there and just left the rest of the bottle. But they're all like so different and unique.
So
and it just showcased that it can be exactly the same.
Yeah.
They sat next to each other in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Every single cask was very, very different.
I think that's the interesting thing as well, though, where it does kind of show the side at how much different like casks and wood does have an influence on your flavour. Like, not saying It's fairly well documented now that, you know, whiskey changes depending on how long you ferment, all these sort of things, but your cask is really important. I mean, the difference between the Isle of Porridge and the Peach and Ginger Fizz was massive, but both fantastic. But what a whiskey.
Brilliant. Well, I think Angus and Ross are bricking it now, lads. I think we could have another 2 co-hosts. Absolutely fantastic. We made it through it.
I want to do that shout out before we finish. Because the top 50 cocktail bars, top 50 bars has been announced.
Big one, number 2.
Which is quite important because a lot of Edinburgh and Scotland bars have done really well.
Looking at the camera.
So it's good just to shout them out, you know, and support your boys and girls. Where's the photo?
You got number 2 was Panda and Sons.
Done a list. Hold on, you're ruining it. Right, okay.
So you've done preparation for this.
This is quite cool, right? So Scotland currently takes up 8% of the UK's population. No, I'm more confident if I speak to you. It takes up 8% of the UK's population. And Scotland as a whole has managed to get 16% of the top 50. So we're fighting way above our weight. The Gate over in Glasgow came 43rd. American Bar Gleneagles 37th. Bramble Bar came 36th. Absent Ear over in Glasgow 33. Daddy Marmalades in Glasgow 18. And then you had Haypaloo 16th. Nauticus 12. I'm buzzing about. Local bar, like absolutely buzzing for that. And then Panda and Sons came 2nd. Brilliant. That's class.
Yeah.
So good.
So that's what's that? That's the
top 50 bars in the UK.
Top 50 bars in the UK.
Yeah.
And Scotland has 16%.
I can tell you that's a top 50 out of a total of 31,537 currently active listed bars.
Brilliant. Well done.
That's class.
Scotland.
Well done. Absolutely
That's
fantastic. Well, guys, well done. Thank you very much, Curtis, for coming on. Thank you
for having me.
Fraser and Chuck for coming in. And Chuck, good luck in Japan.
Oh, cheers. I don't know what we're going to say.
There you go.
A business deal has been struck.
Don't forget your plunger. Well, listen, you've been listening to the Whiskey Stories podcast. Thank you so much for everybody who carries on tuning in. Thanks for everybody who watches us on our YouTube channel. Don't forget, please watch the YouTube channel. If you want to go onto the YouTube channel to watch the guy fall asleep half an hour before our whiskey tasting. Someone has literally fallen asleep during a live podcast recording at Indie Bottle Spotlight, and please do so. Keep liking, sharing, keep talking about the pod. Get onto the Facebook group, get on the Facebook page, on Instagram. Shout out to Scott Moore for keeping us right with all the whiskey days as well. keeping us in there. Thanks lads, thanks for coming on. All the very best. Cheers, man.
Cheers.